This is Red Moon Role-Playing.
Quick question for you. When Victor was branding his victims, was the messaging always consistent? Was it always the I heart not, or does the messaging vary from victim to victim?
From your understanding, there are only two variations on the brand. There's I heart you, and there's I heart not.
Dr. Pages, and I'm crouching down, almost disassociating from just this entire practice for just a moment because my unbridled curiosity here is triggered. You were able to determine that she shot herself in the chest with this shotgun. This brand was made while she was still alive. Based on the angle of the searing, can you potentially tell whether she did this to herself or whether it was done to her? Passing curiosity.
Believe, from my observations, dear Z, it does indeed, although quite unusually, of course, seem to indicate self-infliction. Yes. Self-infliction, or practically, I'd say, if someone had arranged all this very nicely, they'd probably have left some marks, and I don't seem to have. But considering some of the things you and I know, there are quite a few ways to make someone do things like this. Although, that name again you keep mentioning, Victor Landresse, something about that is actually... Wait... And I struggle to remember. But I think... Didn't I actually examine some of those bodies? When was that? 30, 40 years ago? Yes, it almost slipped my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you had very little interest in the perpetrator. You're not an investigator. You're not someone who goes around tracking down murderers as a general rule. I mean, it has been known, but it isn't part of your profession, so to speak. But Victor Latendresse, yes, you've heard the police of Junction City refer to him as Latendresse, Latendresse, Latendresse. It seems people aren't sure, and often colloquially he's referred to as Victor L. But your understanding is, yeah, now this is coming back to you. You remember other victims, and gosh, you've seen so many bodies in the last, well, however many decades you've been doing this, that sometimes they do blur together. But now that Z has called him out by name, and she's pointing out this brand on the victim's tongue, you have seen brands like this before. Likewise inflicted prior to death, but only shortly before death. And it tended to be, and this was always the interesting case with the Victor Latendresse murders, that while he was indeed arrested and he was charged and he was found guilty, in all of the autopsies you performed, Dr. Pages, at least when you were giving an accurate and honest summation, you could only ever really record them as suicides. As far as the mortal police were concerned, that is what they were. It was almost inevitably someone was taking their life after mutilating themselves. Their bodies would be found in the strangest of places, on rooftops, in dumpsters, on the wharf overlooking the river, that kind of thing, but all but one of them. Because one of them, it was your colleague at the time. She's long since retired now, Dr. Aronovich. She made a heartfelt plea to you, Dr. Pages. She said, "We know who this is. We know that this is a setup. We can't prove it scientifically, but we know that that there is not a spate of suicides all conducted in the same manner, in the same horrific manner. We know this is Latendresse." And it was alongside her that you decided to record that Latendress's prints had been found on the gun when it was eventually located. It was your work that tied him to one of the corpses, and that resulted in him being found guilty.
We return to the past.
Junction City Morgue many years ago. Monty, you look no different. You don't look any younger, you don't look any older, you look much the same as you will in several decades' time. But maybe you have a little more of a spring in your step. Maybe the world hasn't ground you down quite so hard as it has by the 2020s. But it's damn difficult to stay optimistic when these corpses keep rolling in. Your long-term colleague, Helena Raunovich, is examining yet another body. Well, you say examining. Her elbow is on the slab. She's very nearly touching the congealed liquid that has been vented from this one. Her forehead propped on her fingers. She's shaking her head. Helen's been here, well, not as long as you, but she's been here a long time. She is equally qualified. She is not, she never came in as a medical student. She transferred in from another city, out from Bangor way, you think. And you actually get on with her. You get on with her well enough. You share some similar interests. And once, when she found your rather, let's call them, artwork, designs, she didn't judge you for them. But she looks utterly depressed right now, does Helen Aronovich.
Oh dear, yes. The string of incidents lately are rather... well, it's an awful lot of work. I haven't seen something like this in quite a while. Not since my truly younger days. Back during, well, my days in London and the war. But I see her like this, and again, I like her. I like her a lot. She's a nice, good doctor. And I do like people. I understand I need to keep them away, but I still like people. I like the living. I respect the dead. I try and, when I feed, not to feed on people who I don't think deserve it. Well, that doesn't always work out. But yes, I see her like this, and I'm going to go over and say, "Spot of tea, doctor?" I know I make terrible tea, but, English tea is always supposed to be a little terrible. At least what my mother always used to say.
How long have we worked together now, Monty? 19 years? We're getting close to 20, aren't we?
20? Oh, goodness me. You might be right. I think I'd only just transferred here from England 20 years ago, was it? How time flies!
In all those years, you have offered me tea every day, every night, every shift we work together, and you know I only drink coffee. I have never once had a cup of your tea. And I love you for constantly forgetting and persistently offering. But I will decline, I'm afraid. And you know something else? She stands up straight now, takes her elbow off the slab, gives it a rub because her arm's clearly fallen asleep. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it to the quiz tonight, the quiz night. I am bushed. It's fair to say.
I see.
Now don't look at me like that.
Sorry. I understand. One day I promise I'll stop offering the teas, but it's a force of habit.
Oh, no.
Mother always used to say manners are vital in life.
I'm always sad that I never got to meet your mother. You talk about her quite often, and I don't mean that in a negative sort of Norman Bates kind of a way. What are we... No, No, she all but brings her heel down in a sort of childish stamp of the foot. No. No, you know what? This one here, she points at the young woman's body on the cold slab next to her. This is number 5 in this morgue alone, Monty. Yet another one, and she rather crudely opens the cadaver's mouth and doesn't use tongs. With her thumb and forefinger, they are gloved, she pulls the tongue out. Just as you will do in 30 years' time. We've been finding these brands everywhere. One of them had them on the sole of their foot. Another one, the roof of their mouth. I mean, I don't need to tell you, you've been finding them as well. How did that one get underneath someone's fingernail? They branded... They removed their fingernail, branded, and waited for their nail to grow? I don't know. I heart you. I heart not. I heart you. I heart not. She lets go of the tongue. And you've heard what they've been saying upstairs, haven't you? The man they keep pulling in for this.
I think so. Something Victor something. But obviously, there's no evidence actually tying him to any of the bodies.
I know that. I know, Monty. She walks over to you now and puts her hand on your shoulder. She has never really been one for physical contact. In 30 years' time, you'll remember this, because when Kenneth threw up, fell on the floor, your hand went to his shoulder in a similar way. Monty, for once, I need you to get... You know what, I was going to say get out of your own head, but that isn't where you are. It's in some... I don't know where your head is all the time, Monty. But... I need to say something, and I don't think you're going to like it, but I need to say it anyway. Do you know how fucking awful it is to just walk to my car from this place every night? And why? Do you know why I say that? Because these women who we've been finding, they're black, they're white, they're young, they're old, they're thin, they're fat, they're every... You know, that they could be filling up a book of women of the world. And indiscriminate, I suppose, is the word. Indiscriminate. So that a pattern isn't obvious, except for the brand. It just looks like a lot of women who have committed suicide, but they all bear the same brand. And I remember first when we first started sending those reports, both of us, I remember us talking, I wonder if there's a cult. I remember you said that. I wonder if there's some kind of cult. And you looked quite pleased when you said it, and I think I did too, like it was some TV movie of the week. And yet, I worry that I'm going to walk to my car one day and I'm going to suddenly be overcome with the desire to burn I heart you or I heart not into my eyelid, the inside of it, and then I'm going to take my life in some ignominious way, and that you're going to be standing over me conducting an autopsy, and despite all indicators to the contrary, evidence notwithstanding, you're going to say, into your little dictaphone. Dr. Helen Aronovich committed suicide approximately 1900 hours by taking a razor blade to her wrists. And you'll put the brand in the report as a curiosity. But there won't be any evidence to link it elsewhere, will there?
I look hard at Dr. Aronovich. I really wish I could try and be a little more comforting, but I've always not actually been very good at that, even though I do try. Although sometimes one's allure does help. As she's saying all this, I have to admit it has all been rather unusual, but I haven't heard anything from my sources that there is this Victor fellow is he one of us? Is he doing something? Is something doing this to these poor girls? I've heard nothing, haven't I?
Not on your side of the fence, no. This doesn't appear to be a hungry issue, certainly not one for the Gaki of the city, of which there are few, admittedly, but everything is so divided, everything is so tribal and cellular, that if this is a situation concerning a curse, and it very well could be, how would you know? Sometimes you can get a sense for these things. Yeah, this feels amiss, but it's almost as if you're finding these bodies a fraction too late. Sometimes there are no phantasms, and when there are, they're often so distressed they can't say anything legible. Helen is looking at you right now. You're off in your own head again, aren't you?
Oh. Suppose I am. Head in the clouds. I don't know what to say. Your work, our work is good.
I'm going to say something now, and I know what I need you to say, and I need you to say it, Monty, and I am, short of falling on my knees and putting my hands together, going to beg you to do something that I know you're not going to be happy doing. So I'm sorry I'm putting you in this position. I understand if you say no, but I really don't want you to. Everyone upstairs is saying, this victim was seen in the company of Victor Latendresse. This victim was last seen in the proximity of Victor Latendresse. The person who's been called in for questioning more than any other is Victor Latendresse. It is Victor Latendresse. I'm not a police detective. You're not a police detective. We know that. But we have his prints on file because they take them whenever they bring him in. I think I can get them. I think I can get the sheet. And I can transfer them from the sheet to one of our records to say that this Jane Doe, or she's not a Jane Doe, but she'll be treated as one because of the way she was found. I think he gets off on that. I think he likes that when these victims are found, their families are embarrassed because of how they're found, because they look like sex suicides or something. But I want to make sure that when the knife that she used to take her life is filed in evidence on our report card. I know this isn't our job. We're not in the evidence. However, we can say we found partial prints, and then if we get the knife, we can match it up to the wounds, and it's at that point we can maybe put the prints on the handle. Please, Monty, you're looking at me like I am insane, but I need you to do the right thing here. It's obviously him. It's clearly him. He's found a way of doing this. Please say something.
I think it over in my mind. I am a firm believer in the truth. I always have been. I believe in doing my work to reveal said truth. And yet, I have had to lie. Several times. And while I try and see myself as a virtuous man, I have not always been able to not harm the innocent. At least their souls. I'm better at it most days these days. But it was very hard at the start, and even now, sometimes, if I don't. Take care. Perhaps this man is innocent, but I do trust the doctor. I'll look at her very firmly, leading her aside just a moment, just so we are at least slightly out of earshot from anyone passing by. Tell me why you're sure it's him. Ignoring all the logical things, you just tell me, why do you know it's him beyond just a hunch?
She looks over her shoulder. One of your lab assistants, a new girl, who you put maybe 6 weeks on before she leaves, is mopping up, so she lowers her voice. It's a feeling like nothing else. I don't know why I can sense it. It's like there's some kind of... call it instinct, but look. Again, I've not seen the whole files, but I know that he's been pulled in multiple times. I know that all of these women, or at least the ones who could be identified, have been in his company. And what's more, I saw him once. I had to go upstairs. I saw him being taken for questioning. We made eye contact. It wasn't like he smiled and sent a shiver down my spine or something like that. I just saw him, and there was something in the confidence with which he was walking. There was something about his gait. It was like the look of a man who knew he could get away with murder. And I know that's not going to be enough for any court, but that's why we have to make some effort, Monty. We have to do what we need to do. And I guarantee when we do it, these crimes will stop. These suicides, murders, whatever they are, they will stop. And if they don't, if by some remote chance they don't, I'll tell the police that it was my doing. Not that I killed them, but I planted this evidence, that I doxed it, and I won't implicate you.
I take a moment to raise a hand. Well, that's already good enough for me. I happen to trust you and your instincts. It's a little unorthodox, perhaps. But as you said, if it does stop a killer, sacrifices need to be made. No? I'll give you whatever paperwork you need. I'll sign whatever you need. And let's call it a favour for a favour. And I chuckle, which again maybe doesn't seem very well fitted to the scenario, but I often do chuckle at awkward moments, and say, you can pay me back sometime, maybe pose for me or something.
Well, as abstract as your art is, I guess you might call it expressionist, I do actually think it's really, you do have a talent, Monty. It's just maybe not one you should be putting in public galleries. And she smiles for the first time, it seems, in several months, and shows you those crooked front teeth that you have grown quite fond of seeing and didn't realise how much you missed. Well, she's been so morose, so depressed, so scared. And she doesn't rush forward and hug you. She doesn't burst into tears. It's nothing nearly so melodramatic. She gives you a nod. That smile doesn't go away. She pats you on the arm. She says thank you, maintaining eye contact. She genuinely means this.
And I'm happy to make someone happy, believe it or not. I'm happy to do something right. Yes, she's right. I know she is. And if she isn't, well, we'll deal with that when the time comes, but I don't think I'm going to have to. No, I think he's on the ball, and I'm going to picture her face, because again, I really want to capture it for later. I do like the Doctor a lot, and I'm going to help her, even if it does perhaps go against my principles, but sometimes principles need to be bent, especially considering my affliction. A favour for a favour.
It was this encounter and your agreement that ultimately resulted in the arrest and charge and guilty findings that ended with Victor Latendresse in his prison transport on the way to Cold Mountain Penitentiary. If it hadn't been for your actions, if it hadn't been for your decision to do a favour for a favour, it's quite possible Latendresse would have walked free. And, sure enough, the murders did end. They did stop. Helen worked with you for another 10 years or so before moving to another city. And by that point you were close enough that parting was quite tearful for both of you. You always promised that you would stay in touch with each other. And never did. Now she would be in her 70s. You have to wonder, Dr. Pages, how she is now. Maybe it's time to catch up with her.
And with that, we return to the present.
She was right. It was this individual. Or at least, well, I'm pretty damn sure it was, and I believed my associate. And here it is again. I look to Zed, taking a moment to clean some of the tools as we seem to finally be coming to the end of this autopsy. Well, either we have a very proficient copycat, proficient in more than mundane ways,
or Victor Latendresse is back.
Somehow. Although, I can't recall, didn't something happen on the way to his execution? He disappeared, didn't he?
Something happened, yes. And the body was never recovered. Doctor, there are 2 other survivors who went on record regarding their experience with Victor Latendresse. If this is the first, we may need to look into those other 2. Or you may need to be on the watch for incoming from those other 2.
That certainly makes sense. I'll finish up the report here. I'll write things up, let the police know. They'll, again, probably assume suicide, but let's keep an eye out. I'll let them know what I can, and in the meantime... Yes, I'm not sure I like this. I don't like people going around murdering people in such a way. It causes an awful bit of a mess. We might have to investigate and put a stop to Mr. Victor Latendresse if he truly has returned.
Could I persuade you not to include the suicide as the cause of death? To keep that under review or evaluation or whatever it is you do in your industry to delay that official declaration?
I chuckle a little. I really do hate being inaccurate, but for you, Z, well, who would I to be refusing a favour for a favour? Sure, for you I'll say inconclusive.
I wink. I smile. We have some additional threads to pull on. And then, Matthew, can I argue that gives me Mystery Seeker for a curse die?
Yeah, I would say so.
Perfect.
Silas. You are currently in your beaten up old wagon, because that's what I assume you would drive. Where is your passenger? In the seat beside you, in the back, in the trunk?
He's in the trunk right now.
Occasionally, whenever you go over a bump, you feel like you hear him say, "Ah! Watch it!" But you know it's in your head. If he is a phantasm back there, he probably wouldn't be complaining about the potholes.
Silas takes his time. He doesn't go too fast. He follows every stoplight, stop sign, and actually takes a detour and stops by bodega. Pick up a carton of cigarettes, which is important for what's about to happen. And he looks at them. And just says, "Not yet," and throws them on the seat in the wagon, gets back in the car, and keeps driving, and makes his way to an abandoned lot, someplace that at one point in time in the city was going to be built up into a new car park or a new apartment building, and just money ran out, or interest ran out, or capitalism took its steely eye somewhere else, and now there's just a bunch of debris lying around. No one seems to care about it. No one gives an eye. It's just something you walk by every day and pretend not to notice. And Silas drags the corpse out into the lot, sets it down, unzips it, looks at his hands. His last time he'll see those hands, because I've been with you for a long time, but time to go. And he steps out of his body. And if anyone were around, they wouldn't see anything, but Silas can still see himself, and sees himself exactly as he was when he died. Dressed in a suit, wearing a fedora, big hole in his chest from when the gangsters murdered him. And he looks at the body one more time, starts trying to get used to being called Kenneth. Doesn't like that, but it is what it is. He steps into the body. I bleed my curse die, which means I have 0 left. Then Kenneth sits up, reaches over the cigarettes and starts smoking, because he knows that he's got to loosen up the vocal cords to get it back to the same timbre that he had in life. But he knows more than anything right now, he needs to beat the shit out of somebody.
Yeah, it's not noble, and it's not fun. It's certainly not virtuous. Your hands are shaking as you lift that cigarette and you take a deep draw on it. Kenneth wasn't a smoker in life. If you were alive, this would be making you feel incredibly sick. Thankfully, the mental lock of addiction combined with the physical inability to chuck up unless you really want it to means that Kenneth does not evacuate his insides. It just feels wrong. Just filling it with smoke. But yeah, as I say, neither noble nor good nor virtuous, because once you've drawn that cigarette down to the filter, your eyes immediately connect with the people you're going to have to fuck with. They don't deserve it. You like to think, all Furies like to think that your vengeance is designed for the deserving. That you'll all be playing the part of the Crow, going after the person who killed you or killed your loved ones. But sometimes the burn just gets too much. The heat needs to be vented, else you might explode, and then what? Then it's utterly indiscriminate. These folks clustered around, you don't know them. They're on a building site on the edge of town. half-built skyscraper, not even half-built. They don't live much of a life. I'm going to give you a choice here, Eddy. The entire group, in fact. You've only got one momentum left. If you want this to be someone who is even moderately warranting a beating, you can spend your last momentum. Treat it as a point of luck in that regard. But if you want their blood on your hands and the guilt that comes with it, Eddy, don't spend the momentum. You're about to thrash some rough sleepers who don't know what's coming and frankly don't deserve a single swat of your hands. Tell me how bleak you want to be.
Silas imagines the rough sleepers are the people who killed him. He keeps telling himself that they're probably responsible for something. Everyone's corrupt at some point. And besides, no one's gonna miss him.
What I want you to roll is close combat and resolve. Now, the reason I want you to do close combat and resolve is to see if you can hold back. Not hold back from the beating. You're going to beat them. It's whether you can stop before you kill someone.
3 hits.
3 hits. In that case, you stop short of breaking any bones. Oh, you break the skin. There's blood spattered all over the place by the time this fight, by the time this, it's not even a brawl, by the time this abuse is done with. 3 men and a woman who didn't deserve it and certainly didn't see it coming have been punched, have been kicked, have been thrown against the scaffolding and the breeze blocks. They're lucky no one got impaled on any rebar. And then, despite the fact your body doesn't need it, you can breathe. You can take in a breath and push it out again. It's almost like warming up before doing some martial arts practice, but for you, this is centering yourself. You can raise your fists, you can push the air out, and with it the smoke that's currently clouding around inside you, and you can walk away. These people won't know what to report, and it's unlikely they will report anything. After all, the cops aren't friends to people like this.
Silas can kind of feel his soul settle into the body finally. Like the whole time, it felt like he was tight, like you're wearing clothes that are just a size too small, like your skin is stretched too far, and then after the blood drips off his knuckles, he finally feels like he's settled in, like this is his home now, this is where he lives now. All he has to do is move the furniture around and live with the consequences.
You can sense on some level, even though the body you're inhabiting is that of a dead man, that he has never been in a fight before in his life. He's probably never thrown a punch. So your arms ache. Your knuckles are sore. But, ironic as it is, you will live with it.
Do I get 1 or 2 curse dice back?
I'm going to give you 2 curse dice for this, because you chose a particularly brutal, unpleasant path there, Eddy, and I want to reward you for it. As you take on this fresh body and you get used to the feel of it wrapped around your bones, what a silly feeling, these bones aren't yours, it's wrapped around something else. Difficult to really say. It's not tangible what you are. You're not smoke, you're not ectoplasm, you're not liquid, you are just you, and you can possess anything dead. There are some dead that can possess things that aren't. Inanimate objects, the living, are the monsters, it's said. That isn't you. You've always stuck to your own cadaver until now, and so Kenneth feels like wearing a new pair of boots that you need to break in. You remember the time you were first offered a new body. This was going back quite some time. Back about 50 years or so. You were still in Junction City even then. You've moved in and out of the city, of course, across the course of your existence, but it always draws you back. Maybe it's the people. No, probably not. Maybe it's the scenery. No, it's the mysteries. It's the constant threads that need pulling here, that anchor your investigation, your investigative urges. But here you are, walking down the boulevard. Good 50 years ago. Back then, of course, everyone was a mod or a rocker. The fashions were unlike anything in the previous decade. People are stitching on badges onto their jackets, ruining perfectly good jackets. They're spiking their hair or applying so much hairspray that you'd choke if you had to breathe. There are men wearing makeup in the open. Still, the Electric Mile, as it's sometimes called, in Junction City, the thriving hub of this small metropolis, is the place to be right now. You're still in your old body, looking like a figure out of time, stepped out of a noir novel. And next to you, keeping in lockstep, you have one of your fellow Furies. Nominally, your sister. Her name is Angel, which is somewhat ironic because she is anything but. You knew her growing up. You weren't actually connected by blood so far as you know, but you both seem to gain your damnation at the same time and have always been as close as siblings. This is her third body. You really need to get out of those threads. I mean, look at the bodies that are around right now. Listen to the music. That body is not going to be able to move. When we get you on a dance floor, you are not going to be able to move in that. I mean, you struggled with the twist. These guys bang their heads. I mean, they throw their heads so much, I'm amazed they're not walking out with concussions and brain damage.
Yeah, well, luckily none of the music they're playing around here is anything that's worth dancing to anyway, so I don't have to worry about it.
Come on, what? Are you still listening to jazz standards?
Ain't nothing wrong with a little bit of jazz, you know? That music ages like fine wine.
Ah, well, there's the operative term. Silas, a little bit of jazz. Why is it whenever I go to your place and I need to figure out what trick you've got on your lease that has somehow resulted in you being able to stay in the same damn... Well, you call it apartment, I call it a barn for this long. And there's Ellington or Ella Fitzgerald or...
It's, you know... First of all, if you want to have a good place in town, all it takes is a little bit of perseverance and a lot of blackmail, and you're golden. It's fine. But
who's being blackmailed here? You?
No,
or
I'm
the landlord?
The person who owns the building owes me a favor, and you just, keep his information quiet, and everything's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But look, I mean, look. Have you seen the bodies around here lately? Look at that guy's hair isn't even cut. Come on, how am I supposed to wear that?
Like a hat? I don't know.
What's wrong with my hat?
She takes it off of you and puts it on her head. It was this moment where you lost your hat. 50 years ago, and you still reach for it. I tell you what, it looks better on me.
Yeah, well, you ain't wrong there, sister.
We'll find something else for you to wear on your head. How about that? If not big hair, we'll find, I don't know, maybe you'd look good in a beret. I mean, I know we're about... That was more of a thing 10, 15 years ago, all the beatniks, but I'm sure you could carry it off, look a little arty. You've got the gait for it, the slimline figure.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's take it slow. It's taken me decades to get rid of the hat. Maybe in a few more decades, I'll think of changing the suit, and then we'll talk about a body.
Oh my god. She stops you. You're outside a fine dining restaurant, and for a while there, the two of you are blocking the entranceway. It's funny how the dead can often be quite oblivious to the living. And so, while a family in sharp threads, fine suits and gowns are trying to edge their way past you, their excuse me's and pardon me's roll completely over you. You're not wearing literally the same suit.
Of course not.
The same jacket.
Of course not. It's not the exact same suit.
Well, it's not the same tailor. I mean, he probably died 100 years ago.
Oh, I'm not that old.
Well, I know that, but your tailor might have been.
Well, no, I mean, I like a certain look, and I just kind of keep it going, you know?
A certain cut. It's called the Dillinger, I think.
Yeah, you're so funny, you slay me.
Anyway. I need to tell you something. I didn't just bring you out here for the witty repartee.
What's the rumpus?
There's a new Fury coming into town. Someone needs to apparently show him the ropes.
Alright.
They wanted you to do it.
Duh.
I've said I'll do it. Because apparently he's a bit high maintenance, you know?
Okay.
And I know you've got all these gigs you're looking into right now, and frankly, I've been on the bench for a bit too long with the family ever since the incident with the, flesh-eating zombie issue.
Yeah, that was funny.
Well, I thought it was funny. Apparently, the Shades took it badly. Diplomatic incident.
Well, whatever. They'll get over it.
They need to crack a smile occasionally, and as a Fury, that is a pretty hard thing for me to say. But God, they're depressing.
Right?
Anyway.
Oh man. But I appreciate it. I appreciate you
Anyway.
taking a bullet for me, because I ain't got time for the newbie.
No. It's Victor something. I think he's from up north, Canada way.
Yeah, great.
I don't know why he's come down here. I'm guessing it's a family connection or something. I get the impression he is a handful. And so he's been moved on from wherever he was. Montreal, maybe, down here. But I thought I'd let you know because I'm going to be out of touch for a couple of weeks. They want me to do the grand tour, basically. Show him around the city, introduce him to the other families, make nice... Well, they wanted you for this, can you imagine? And I'm hoping that if I can do it well enough with a smile on my face, they might start throwing some gigs my way, and I don't have to feel like the last spook at the feast.
Yeah, no, you'll be fine. Just, don't swear as much as you usually do, and try to smile more than you snarl, and you should be fine. You'll be okay. You're good.
The fucking hypocrisy. Not you, the family. They are always after that, aren't they? When we get into these diplomatic engagements, these parties, these festivals, our rants and raves, our communal therapy groups, depending on who's hosting. They always say, make sure you wear a smile.
Right.
Forget you're a Fury for an evening. As if we got to choose this. Yeah. I don't know who we're trying to impress, other than Mummy and Daddy on top of the tree, and I can't remember the last time I actually had a proper meeting with them. Then again, I don't really want one.
Silas takes out 2 cigarettes, lights them both up, and hands one to Angel.
Oh, thank you. I've been jonesing for a puff or two, although you should really try pot. I know it's been floating around for a while. They're saying it's not even addictive. Not that we need to care about that. apparently it even it can affect the brain, the cranial synapses of a dead host, is what I'm told.
Who told you that?
A puff, puff, puff of... That's what I was told, and they even told me.
So now what I'm hearing is you're trying to tell me either stop smoking or I need to get a new body because I'm going to ruin this body with smoking. This dead corpse.
Oh, Christ. All right, you know what? Keep being the spokesperson for Marlborough, and we'll see how many friends you earn.
But seriously though, it's like I get it. It's gonna be hard, and if you need help, right? You know my number. I'm home some nights, but like, don't the smiling thing, right? I mean, it's not just always bullshit. I get it. It feels good to let go. It really does, and I get that. But we're not just smiling for everybody else. Sometimes we have to do it for ourselves too. And that hurts, and it's hard. Sometimes smiling for ourselves is the hardest thing we can do. But you got to do it. Because it can't just always be like this. And I know I'm a hypocrite. I get it. Trust me. I hear myself saying it, and it sounds weird, but I've been thinking about it lately, and can't always be about vengeance. Sometimes it's got to be about you too.
Well, thank you for the lesson, Bob Ross.
Good. So maybe knock off the body thing for another 10 years, maybe.
All right. You wear your comfortable shoes.
Thank you.
Okay. And in a couple of weeks we'll catch up, and that will have been me having laid off, and then we'll start this joust again. But it's good to see you. And oh look, these people are trying to get in. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, fuck you too.
Move somewhere else.
A bunch of assholes.
Jesus.
Look, if this doorstep isn't a public space, why is it on the sidewalk?
Well, you want smoke in your face? Go someplace else, you jackass.
Right. I need to get ready to meet this guy, set up a place for him to live, or you know what I mean.
Whatever.
And we'll catch up after it's all done, but stay out of trouble.
Maybe. See how it goes.
All right, make trouble, don't enter someone else's.
Yeah, now we're talking.
She gives you a firm hug, kiss on the cheek.
Same.
Takes her cigarette out of her mouth, puts it back in yours, and says, keep hold of that for me, okay?
Got it.
And she disappears. Not quite literally, but that is the last time you see her. Victor, whoever Victor was, I mean, you certainly started putting two and two together in the decades that followed, though Victor Latondres's killing spree wasn't for another 20 years. He never arrived in Junction City, so far as you knew. And when Angel just upped and vanished, your family was very keen to describe it as the kind of thing Angel would do. You asked around, who was Victor? Would he know something? Maybe they met up, maybe they got into some trouble. Your family, your fellow Furies, were all pretty adamant. Nope, there was never a Victor that was coming down to Junction City. No, certainly no one from Canada. No, you've got it wrong. She was lying. She was telling you a story. Maybe she hooked up with someone. Maybe she just didn't want to hurt your feelings that she was finally flying the coop. You'd been in and out of Junction City for many, many times, and yet Angel had always been a caged bird, you could say. Comfortable in the cage, always rattling the cage, but never desiring to leave the city. And as far as your fellow Furies were concerned, especially your elders, no, she's just gone. She must have flown the coop. And yeah, 20 years later, Silas, Victor Latondres shows up, starts killing people. A Fury, apparently. The thought undoubtedly crossed your mind. French-sounding name. Name is Victor, but you never had a chance to meet him. The Fury Elders certainly weren't keen on you interviewing or interrogating him. And now, cutting back to the present, it appears he is back again. Maybe now you will get some answers behind the whereabouts of your sister, though they may not be answers that you want to hear.
Silas takes another drag of the cigarette, and even though it's been decades, he can still taste her lipstick on it.
You have listened to an episode of Red Moon Roleplaying, where we play the scenario Suffer My Sins for Curseborne, which is published by Onyx Path Publishing. Curseborne is on Kickstarter right now, and you can find a link in the show notes. Story guide was Matthew Dawkins, and we were also joined by Bridgett Jeffries and Eddy Webb. The music was created by Atrium Carceri and was used with permission from their label, Cryochamber. Please check out cryochamber.bandcamp.com or their YouTube channel for more of their lovely dark ambient. We would love to give massive thanks to our champions of the Red Moon: Martin Heuschober, Simon Cooper, David, Julia, Camilla, Bob Lange, Cameron, Graham Barey, Doug Thomson, Lily, Mike Parker, and Maciej for their generous support. And we would of course also like to thank all of our other patrons. Without your support, the show would not be possible. If you want to support our work, please check us out on Patreon. You can get access to our Call of Cthulhu bonus campaign, Shadows of Yog-Sothoth, with Matthew as our keeper, as well as bonus campaigns for Cult of Divinity Lost and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. On top of that, we also offer early and raw access to all of our recordings, and you can also hear your name read on the show as a champion of the Red Moon. Finally, you could also play some Cult with us. Most importantly, that support is what keeps the show going, so do check us out there. Thank you again for listening, and remember that the world is cursed.